A rainy night alone can feel like the perfect setting for introspection and tranquility. Yet, there's something about the sound of raindrops pattering against the window and the chill in the air that makes the atmosphere unsettling, especially when you find yourself alone. If you're looking for something to both captivate and send shivers down your spine this evening, here are 3 true scary stories that will have you questioning the safety of your own home. 1. The Midnight Caller Who Knew Too Much. It started as an ordinary Saturday night, much like any other, when Sarah, an office worker living alone in a small apartment, settled in to enjoy a quiet evening. The rain was relentless, tapping against the windows as she curled up with a book. It was one of those nights when the world felt muffled by the sound of the storm outside. As she read, a strange sensation crept over her, the kind you get when you feel like you're being watched. Shaking it off, she tried to focus, but her peace was soon interrupted by the shrill ring of the phone. Sarah glanced at the caller ID. Unknown number. Curious but not overly concerned, she answered. "Hello," she said, trying to mask the unease creeping up her spine. There was no response, just the sound of heavy breathing. Then a whisper, clear as day. "I know you're alone." Sarah's heart stopped. How could someone know that? She hadn't told anyone about her weekend plans. The line went dead. She stared at the phone, her hands trembling, unsure of what to do next. As if on cue, it rang again. Same unknown number. This time, she let it go to voicemail. The voicemail message was simple, a whisper. "Sarah, I can see you." The call came through several more times that night. Each time, the voice grew closer, more urgent. Sarah tried to block the number, but it kept calling. It wasn't until she heard a tapping at her window that her blood ran cold. Outside, through the rain-soaked glass, she saw a shadowy figure standing perfectly still, watching her. Panicking, she dialed 911, but when the police arrived, the figure had vanished. They found no trace of anyone outside. The unsettling truth was that the caller, whoever they were, seemed to know things about Sarah that no one else could have known. The police never found the person, and to this day, Sarah still wonders who was watching her that stormy night. 2. The Uninvited Guest in the Dark. It was late autumn when Olivia, a young woman new to the city, decided to spend her weekend at her apartment, nestled in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. The heavy rain that had been falling for hours made everything outside look eerie, like a scene out of a movie. She loved the sound of the storm as it raged against the windows, but tonight, something was different. She couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. As Olivia relaxed with a cup of tea, a knock came at her door. The unexpected visitor seemed odd, but she opened it nonetheless, only to find no one standing there. Instead, a small box lay on her doorstep, drenched from the rain. There was no return address, no note, nothing to explain its presence. Intrigued, Olivia brought the box inside and carefully opened it. Inside, wrapped in brown paper, was an old, dusty key. Her first thought was that it must have been a mistake, but something about it felt wrong. As she held it in her hand, the temperature in the room dropped and the lights flickered. She chalked it up to a power surge, but a strange feeling lingered in the air. The night went on, but Olivia couldn't shake the unease that had settled in her gut. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind that rattled the windows, seemed louder and more intense than before. The key, however, remained the focal point of her unease. Around midnight, as she was reading in bed, she heard soft footsteps outside her door. She froze, thinking it was the house settling. But the steps continued, pacing back and forth. Then, a whisper just barely audible came from the hallway. "I know where you're hiding." Terrified, Olivia grabbed the key and rushed to the front door, but it was locked. She tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. The footsteps outside stopped, but she could feel the presence of someone just on the other side, waiting. The key in her hand grew colder, almost ice-like. It felt alive. The next morning, Olivia found the key had vanished, but the feeling of being watched never truly left her. She's never been able to explain that night, but she still locks every door and window before the rain begins to fall. 3. The Stalker in the Storm. Late at night, on a particularly stormy evening, Ben was alone at his family's farmhouse. The wind howled outside, and the rain was so heavy that he could barely see through the window. He loved the isolation the peace it brought, but that night, something felt off. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as he sat in the living room, reading a book. A knock on the door interrupted the silence. Ben stood up, confused. Who would be visiting in such weather? He peered through the peephole, but saw nothing. Still, he opened the door, thinking it was probably someone seeking shelter from the storm. As soon as the door creaked open, the lights flickered, and Ben saw a figure standing in the rain. The figure didn't move, didn't say anything, just stood there. "Can I help you?" Ben asked. His voice shaky, the person didn't respond. Instead, they reached into their coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled photograph. Ben's heart dropped when he saw it. It was a picture of his own house, taken from a distance, with him standing in the front yard. He didn't know who the person was, but it was clear that they had been watching him for some time. Before Ben could react, the person turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Ben slammed the door shut and immediately locked it, his pulse racing. Later that night, as the storm raged on, Ben heard scratching at his window. He looked out to find the same figure, standing at the edge of the yard, staring up at him. It wasn't until the figure turned and disappeared into the woods that Ben felt the crushing weight of fear. The following day, Ben called the police, but they never found the person who had been watching him. All they found was the photograph as though it had simply appeared. Since then, Ben never felt safe when the storm clouds gathered. There was always the lingering feeling that someone, somewhere, was waiting for the right moment to return. These 3 true stories are a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying things aren't the monsters in the dark. It's the people who watch from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The rain may wash away the traces of their presence, but the fear it leaves behind lingers long after the storm has passed. The next time you hear a knock on the door or a faint whisper in the night, think twice before answering. You never know who or what might be waiting.